A tormented rich man throws a dark briefcase into the dense forest to bury a secret. However, his pet raven, a watchful shadow, catches up to it and, pecking at its clasp, is shocked by what it reveals inside. Edgar landed with the lightness of a dark feather on the leather briefcase, which lay unceremoniously among the damp leaves and moss. His eyes, like small obsidian beads, fixed on the rusted metal clasp. Months of silent observation had sharpened his perception beyond animal instinct. He had seen Eva smile at Arthur, and minutes later her face contort into a mask of contempt on the phone, speaking about Elias. He had seen the letters she intercepted, the icy glances she cast towards the west wing of the mansion, where Arthur's elderly father lived reclusively. With a sharp, precise beak, Edgar nudged the clasp. It wasn't the first time he had interacted with human objects. His curiosity was insatiable. The metal yielded with a soft click, and the briefcase sprang open, revealing a tangle of yellowed papers, faded photographs, and a few seemingly worthless objects. But amidst this disarray from the past, two documents stood out, almost screaming in their sinister clarity. The first was an eviction notice dated a few months prior, bearing the City Hall's seal, but the signature. Edgar, with his dark intelligence, recognized Eva's handwriting, crudely imitating an official's. The second, even more disturbing, was a will. Elias's name was there, but the handwriting, the terms, the haste in which it seemed to have been drafted, everything reeked of falsehood, and the beneficiary, Eva, of course. There was no mention of Arthur, nor of any other relative. It was a blatant expropriation, a meticulous and cruel scheme against an already vulnerable man. The Raven felt a chill that wasn't from the cold. He didn't fully comprehend the words, but the intent. The malice behind those pieces of paper was palpable. It was the missing piece in the puzzle of Eva's cruelty, the irrefutable proof of her crumbling facade. With a swift movement, Edgar grabbed the forged eviction notice with his beak and then the fake will, awkwardly rolling it in his talons. They were too large to carry easily, but his determination was greater. Arthur sat on the back porch, his face buried in his hands, the whiskey untouched beside him. The argument with Eva had been brutal. Her words about Elias's need to sign the documents to organize his finances echoed in his mind, mixed with guilt for not being able to confront her. He felt like a coward, a fool. It was then that a dark shadow hovered over him. Arthur lifted his head, his eyes clouded, and saw Edgar, his raven, struggling to fly, the papers dangling precariously from his beak and talons. The bird circled once and, with a hoarse squawk, released the documents. They fell, with a soft rustle, directly onto Arthur's lap. Confused, Arthur picked up the papers. The eviction notice, the City Hall's seal, the recent date. His eyes scanned the handwriting, and a knot formed in his stomach. That wasn't an official signature, it was. It was Eva's handwriting. His heart began to pound erratically. He picked up the second document, the will. He read his father's name, Elias. He read Eva's name as the sole beneficiary. And the signature, again a grotesque, hurried, almost childish imitation. The air seemed to thin in Arthur's lungs. A wave of nausea hit him. The pieces clicked into place with shocking brutality. His father's isolation, Eva's excuses to keep him away, the financial difficulties she mentioned. It wasn't to organize Elias's finances. It was to steal from him. Eva wasn't the loving, dedicated wife he believed her to be. She was a predator, and his own father, Elias, was the prey. The shock paralyzed him. The whiskey toppled, spilling onto the floor like the tears that began to well in his eyes, not from sadness, but from a glacial fury and a profound horror. The tears that began to well in his eyes, not from sadness, but from a glacial fury and a profound horror. Arthur didn't feel the night's chill, nor the smell of the spilled drink. His mind was a whirlwind of images and sounds. a cruel retrospective of his own blindness. He recalled the past few months. Elias, his father, once a vibrant man full of stories, wasting away in the West Wing, increasingly reclusive, paler. Ava's excuses to keep him away. He needs rest, dear. The doctor said visits agitate him. He's so fragile, I don't want you to worry about anything. And Arthur, the lovesick fool, swallowing every word, every lie, as if it were nectar. Ava's voice now resonated in his memory with a different tone, a sinister echo. We need him to sign these papers, Arthur. It's to organize his finances for his own good. His good. It was for her good, for the benefit of her own ambition. The heated arguments, her insistence, the way her eyes gleamed with an intensity Arthur had mistaken for passion, but which he now saw as pure greed. He clutched the documents in his hands, their crumpled edges cutting into his skin. Ava's handwriting, so familiar from love letters and affectionate notes, was now the irrefutable proof of her betrayal. The imitation of Elias's signature on the will was so blatant, so crude, that Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. How could he have been so blind? How could he have ignored the signs, the whispers of intuition he always suppressed in the name of love? The raven, Edgar, watched from a nearby branch, his dark eyes fixed on Arthur. There was no triumph in his gaze, only a silent gravity, as if he shared the weight of the revelation. Arthur looked up at the bird, and for an instant felt a strange connection, a mute gratitude. Edgar, the silent observer, the messenger of truth. A wave of nausea hit him again, but this time it was accompanied by a cold, controlled rage. The fury wasn't explosive, but a burning ember that ignited in his chest, promising to incinerate everything in its path. Eva had not only betrayed him, she had betrayed his father's trust, exploited his vulnerability, and done so under the roof of his own home, right under his nose. Arthur stood up, his knees trembling slightly, but his posture hardened. He was no longer the tormented, indecisive man of minutes ago. The passion that had blinded him had turned into a bitter poison, and Eva's mask of virtue had shattered into 1,000 pieces before his eyes. He looked at the mansion, lights on in some windows, imagining Eva in some room, perhaps smiling, perhaps planning her next move. Her image, once a refuge, was now the personification of betrayal. "Eva," he whispered, his voice hoarse, almost unrecognizable. "You underestimated all of us." With the document still firmly clutched, Arthur headed inside the house. There was no haste in his steps, but a relentless determination. He needed answers. He needed to confront her. But it wouldn't be an impulsive confrontation driven by blind rage. It would be a reckoning, meticulous and painful, like the truth he had just unearthed. The night had barely begun, and Eva's web of lies was about to unravel, revealing the predator behind the smile. Arthur turned his back on Eva, not because his anger had lessened, but because her presence was a poison he could no longer bear. Each step that took him away from the living room was an act of liberation, but also a deeper plunge into the darkness of betrayal. The documents in his hand seemed to burn, a physical reminder of the rot that had hidden beneath the veneer of his perfect life. He ascended the marble staircase, the sound of his shoes echoing in the mansion's oppressive silence. The house, once a refuge, now felt like a mausoleum of lies. The image of Eva, alone in the living room, her mask of cruelty fully exposed, etched itself into his mind. She was a predator, and he the fool who had fed and protected her. Arthur's priority now was his father, Elias, the man he loved and who had been brutally exploited right under his nose. Guilt was an overwhelming weight, but it only served to fuel the cold flame of his determination. He needed to see Elias, needed to ensure he was safe, and needed to hear the truth from his own mouth, however painful it might be. Elias's room was on the upper floor, a more modest and cozy space, far from the ostentatious luxury Eva so cherished. Arthur hesitated for a moment before knocking softly on the door. There was no answer. He carefully pushed the doorknob and opened the door, peeking inside. Elias was sitting in his favorite armchair near the window, gazing into the darkness of the forest. His figure was small and frail, his shoulders stooped by the weight of age, and Arthur now realized by fear. The dim light from the bedside lamp illuminated his wrinkled face, revealing an expression of profound melancholy. "Father," Arthur called, his voice soft, trying not to startle him. Elias started, turning his head slowly. His eyes, once full of a gentle sparkle, now carried a shadow of apprehension. "Arthur, what are you doing here at this hour? Has something happened?" Arthur approached, feeling a pang in his chest at the fear in his father's eyes. He knelt beside the armchair, placing the documents carefully on the floor. "Father, I need to talk to you. It's about Eva. It's about these papers." Elias paled, and his hands began to tremble. "The papers? No. No, Arthur. Please, don't ask me about it. She'll be angry." The mention of Eva's fear made Arthur's blood boil again. "She won't do anything else to you, Father, I promise. But I need you to tell me the truth. Did she force you to sign these documents? The eviction notice? The will?" He pointed to the papers on the floor. Elias lowered his gaze, tears welling in his eyes. "She said if I didn't sign, you would lose everything. She said I was a burden, that you didn't want me here anymore, that it was for your own good, so you wouldn't have to worry about me." He sobbed, his voice choked. I just wanted to protect you, my son." Arthur felt a lump in his throat. Eva's cruelty was even deeper than he had imagined. She had used Elias's love for him as a weapon. He took his father's cold hands, squeezing them gently. "Father, she lied. She lied to both of us. I would never see you as a burden. Never. She did this out of greed, out of pure malice." Elias looked up, a spark of hope mixed with pain. So it's not true? You're not sending me away?" "Never, Father. This is your home. And Eva no longer has power over us." Arthur felt his anger transform into an iron resolve. He would not only protect his father, but also dismantle every one of Eva's lies. "I'm going to fix this, Father. I promise, but I need you to be strong. I need you to trust me." Elias nodded, a trembling sigh escaping his lips. "I trust you, my son. I always have." Arthur stood up, the documents once again in his hands. He looked at his father, whose face, though still marked by sadness, seemed a little lighter. The truth was a heavy burden, but also a liberation. Edgar, the raven, landed silently on the windowsill, his dark eyes observing the scene, a silent guardian of the justice that was to come. Arthur knew the battle would be long and arduous. Eva was cunning and relentless, but she had made a fatal mistake. She had underestimated a son's love for his father and the intelligence of a raven. The night was still young, and Arthur had much to do. He needed more evidence, allies, an infallible plan to unmask Eva once and for all. He wouldn't rest until justice was served. Arthur left his father's room, the door closing softly behind him, as if to protect Elias from the approaching storm. The documents in his hands were more than just papers. They were the materialization of betrayal, the irrefutable proof of Eva's cruelty. The promise he had made to Elias that he would fix everything echoed in his mind, transforming pain into a relentless engine. He couldn't fail. Not after all his father had suffered. The mansion, once a home of luxury and apparent tranquility, now seemed like a stage for a dark drama. Every shadow, every silence seemed to hide Eva's calculating presence. Arthur descended the stairs, not to confront her again, but to initiate the next phase of his plan. He needed a safe place to think, to act, away from her eyes and ears. His office, on the ground floor, was the perfect refuge. A room lined with books, with a large oak desk and a view of the nocturnal gardens. Upon entering, he lit only a single lamp, the soft light creating an atmosphere of introspection. Edgar, who had silently followed him, landed on the backrest of a leather armchair, his dark eyes fixed on Arthur, a constant and vigilant presence. Arthur spread the documents across the desk. The forged eviction notice, the fake will, and other sheets he hadn't yet examined in detail. He needed more than his father's confession, and these papers. Eva was cunning. She would try to discredit Elias, him, and even Edgar. He needed an arsenal of evidence, witnesses, a strategy that would corner her without escape. The first thing was the security of the documents. He examined them again, looking for any detail, any clue that might have gone unnoticed. The signatures, crudely forged, were a good start, but he needed a handwriting expert, and he needed a digital copy, a backup, in case Eva tried to destroy them. He picked up his cell phone, hesitating for a moment. Who could he trust? Who would be a loyal and discreet ally? His company lawyers. They were good, but they were used to dealing with contracts and mergers, not with such intimate and perverse family frauds. He needed someone with experience in criminal law, someone who knew how to navigate the murky waters of blackmail and forgery. His gaze fell upon a photograph on his desk, him and his cousin Daniel, on a fishing trip years ago. Daniel was a renowned criminal lawyer, known for his unwavering ethics and sharp mind. They didn't speak often, but family loyalty had always been a pillar for Arthur. Daniel was the right person. Arthur dialed the number, his heart pounding. It was late, but the urgency of the situation didn't allow for waiting. Daniel answered on the third ring, his voice a little sleepy. "Arthur? At this hour? Has something happened?" "Daniel? It's me. Sorry to call so late, but it's urgent. It's about Eva and my father." Arthur's voice was tense, but controlled. There was a silence on the other end of the line. Daniel, always perceptive, sensed the gravity. "I'm listening. What happened?" Arthur took a deep breath, preparing to unravel the web of lies that had entangled his life. She forged documents, blackmailed my father into signing a fake will. She isolated him, terrorized him. "I have the evidence, Daniel. I need your help." Daniel's voice changed, all sleepiness vanishing. "Forgery? Blackmail? Arthur, this is serious. Do you have these documents with you?" "Yes, they're here in my office, and my father just confirmed everything to me." "All right. Don't touch anything else. Don't tell anyone. I'm coming over now. I'll be about an hour. Don't do anything until I get there. Understood?" The command in Daniel's voice was clear and professional. "Understood," Arthur replied, feeling a faint relief. He wasn't alone. He hung up the phone, looking at Edgar. The Raven tilted his head, as if he understood every word. Arthur knew the battle was just beginning. But now he had a human ally, in addition to his faithful winged companion. The night would be long, and the path to justice tortuous. But Arthur was ready. He would protect his father and unmask Eva, whatever the cost. Eva's mask of virtue would be torn off, and the truth, however painful, would come to light for all to see. Arthur hung up his cell phone, the final click echoing in the heavy silence of the office. Daniel's promise to arrive in an hour was a thread of hope amidst the darkness that had settled in his life. He looked at the documents spread across the oak desk, each sheet a testament to Eva's perfidy. The forged eviction notice, the fake will, and now, beside them, a series of bank statements and receipts he had found in an old folder of his father's, which Eva had apparently overlooked. He had quickly examined them while waiting for Daniel. They were significant transfers of money from Elias's account to an unknown account, dated over the past few months, the period during which Eva had intensified her isolation and blackmail. Edgar, from the backrest of the armchair, watched Arthur with his obsidian eyes. The raven seemed to share the weight of that moment, a silent witness, and in some way, an accomplice in the pursuit of justice. Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. Eva was more calculating than he had ever imagined. She didn't just want the inheritance. She was financially draining Elias while emotionally holding him hostage. The hour that followed was an eternity of turbulent thoughts. Arthur tried to organize the documents, separating the forged ones from the bank statements, creating a mental timeline of events. Rage simmered in his chest, but he channeled it into a cold determination. It wasn't a time for emotional outbursts, but for strategy and precision. Punctually, the sound of an approaching car broke the night's silence. Arthur stood up, his heart pounding. Daniel. He opened the office door and waited. A few minutes later, Daniel appeared in the hallway, his face serious and tired, but with a spark of professional focus in his eyes. He was a middle-aged man, with graying hair and an imposing demeanor, even in casual attire. "Arthur," Daniel said, his voice low but firm, "you look like you've been through hell." "And I have, Daniel. Come in, please." Arthur gestured towards the office. Daniel entered, his eyes sweeping the room before settling on the documents on the desk. Edgar, sensing the new presence, let out a small caw, but remained in his spot, observing the interaction with his usual intensity. "So, is this all of it?" Daniel asked, pointing to the papers. "Yes, and there's more. My father confirmed everything. Eva blackmailed him, terrorized him, isolated him, and these statements, she was stealing from him too." Arthur tried to keep his voice steady, but the indignation was palpable. Daniel approached the desk, picking up the forged eviction notice first. He examined it with the attention of a surgeon, his fingers tracing the lines of the signature. The forgery is crude, but to an inattentive layman, it might pass. We'll need a handwriting expert to formally attest to this. He then picked up the will, and this one, the same pattern. The absence of legitimate witnesses is a glaring error, but she must have forged that too. She told my father it was for my own good, that I didn't want him here anymore. She used his love for me against him, Arthur explained, his voice choked by the memory of Elias's pain. Daniel sighed, shaking his head. "Cruel. This is emotional blackmail and coercion, Arthur, and the bank statements. That's theft and fraud. Eva is in serious trouble." He looked at Arthur. "But she's cunning, you said. She won't give up easily. We'll need an impeccable strategy." "What do we do first?" Arthur asked, feeling a glimmer of hope, a light at the end of the tunnel. "First, we need to ensure Elias's safety. He is the main witness and the victim. He needs to be safe and away from her influence. Second, these documents. We need to digitize them and store them in a secure location, in addition to having the originals under legal custody. Third, the handwriting expert. I'll call a trusted one first thing tomorrow. Fourth, we need a formal statement from Elias, with all the details of the blackmail and coercion." Daniel paused, looking at Arthur with seriousness. "Arthur, this will be a war. Eva will try to discredit Elias, claim he's senile, that you're manipulating him. She might even try to play the victim. We need to be one step ahead." "I understand. I'm ready for whatever it takes," Arthur affirmed, his voice firm, his determination now a cold, constant flame. "Good. We can't confront her yet. She needs to keep believing she's in control. That will give us time to build our case. For now, act normally. Don't give her any reason to suspect." Daniel picked up his cell phone. "I'll call my team. We'll need a search warrant for her house to see if there are more incriminating documents, and perhaps an asset freeze, considering the transfers." Arthur nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the strength of having such a capable ally. Edgar, on the backrest of the armchair, let out a low caw, as if a sign of approval. The battle would begin soon, and Arthur knew that, with Daniel by his side and truth as their weapon, they would have a chance. The night was still long, but the path to justice, though arduous, now seemed less solitary. Daniel hung up his cell phone, the seriousness on his face deepening. "My team is in motion. The first step is the most urgent, Elias. I know a discreet place, a private nursing home, far from here, with security and trustworthy staff. We can take him there tomorrow morning, before Eva has any chance to react." Arthur nodded, the thought of his father being safe igniting a small flame of relief in his chest. "How will we do this? She monitors him constantly. He can barely speak on the phone without her being nearby." "We'll need a distraction," Daniel mused, tapping his fingers on the table. "Does Ava have any regular commitments? Something that takes her out of the house for a few hours?" Arthur thought for a moment. "She has a yoga class on Tuesday and Thursday mornings. It's sacred to her. She never misses it." "Perfect," Daniel said with a thin smile. "Tomorrow is Thursday. As soon as she leaves, you contact Elias. Explain to him that everything is all right, that you're coming to get him. Don't give him details about the destination, just that he'll be safe. I'll have a discreet car waiting. One of my associates, a former police officer, will drive him. He's trained to handle delicate situations." "And then?" Arthur asked, his mind already racing with scenarios. "Then you go back home and act as if nothing happened. Eva mustn't suspect. Her shock will come when she realizes Elias is gone, but by then he'll already be far away and safe, and we'll have his statement." Daniel looked at the documents. "I'll take the originals with me. My team will make digital copies and store them in a safe. You can't have any of this here." Arthur handed the papers to Daniel, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "Thank you, Daniel. I don't know what I'd do without you." "That's what I'm here for, Arthur. Now go get some rest. You have a difficult day ahead. Remember, normalcy. That's your weapon for now." Daniel bid farewell, leaving Arthur alone in the office, the night's silence once again filling the space. Edgar, who had remained motionless, now flew to Arthur's shoulder, rubbing his head against his neck. Arthur stroked the raven's dark feathers. "Normalcy," he whispered to himself, the word sounding hollow and ironic. The following morning arrived with a dense fog, almost an omen. Arthur woke early, his stomach churning with anxiety. He had breakfast with Eva, forcing a smile and mundane conversations about the weather and plans for the day. Eva, oblivious to the brewing storm, seemed in good spirits, chattering about her yoga class and a new recipe she wanted to try. "I'm leaving now, darling," she said, kissing his cheek. "Don't wait for me for lunch. I might meet the girls after class." "All right, love. Have fun," Arthur replied, his voice firmer than he expected. As soon as Eva's car left the garage, the sound of the engine fading in the distance, Arthur felt his heart race. He waited a few minutes, making sure she was truly gone, that there was no chance of an unexpected return to retrieve something forgotten. The silence of the house, once oppressive, now seemed like an ally. With trembling hands, Arthur picked up the phone and dialed his father's house number. Each ring seemed like a drumbeat in his chest. Elias answered on the second ring, his voice weak and cautious, almost a whisper. "Hello?" "Father, it's me, Arthur," he said, trying to remain calm, but emotion already choked his voice. "Eva has left. Are you alone?" There was an audible sigh of relief on the other end of the line, a sound that broke Arthur's heart. "Arthur, my son." "Yes, I'm alone. She just left for yoga." "Great. Father, listen carefully. I know everything. I saw the documents. But everything is all right now. I'm coming to get you. Understood?" Arthur spoke quickly, the words flowing with an urgency he could barely control. Elias's voice choked, and Arthur could hear a muffled sob. I understand, my son. I knew you would come." I knew you wouldn't abandon me." "Never, father. I love you. I'll be there soon." Arthur hung up, feeling a pang of guilt for having taken so long, for having been so blind, but also an overwhelming wave of determination. Arthur started the engine, feeling the familiar rumble of the car. The fog still lingered, enveloping the mansion in a grey veil, but Arthur felt that, for the first time in a long time, he was beginning to see the path clearly. The fear was still there, but it was overcome by a newfound strength, fueled by his love for his father and a thirst for justice. He drove, his heart pounding, towards the house where his father was trapped, ready to free him. Arthur drove through the fog, each curve of the road seeming longer and more uncertain than the last. The raven, Edgar, remained motionless in the passenger seat, his dark, penetrating eyes fixed on the road, as if he could see through the grey veil that enveloped the landscape. The silence inside the car was heavy, broken only by the soft hum of the engine and the frantic beat of Arthur's heart. He felt a strange mix of relief and guilt, relief for finally acting, guilt for having taken so long, for having been so blind to his father's pain. As he approached Elias's house, a small, modest residence that contrasted sharply with the opulence of his own mansion, Arthur felt a tightening in his chest. The curtains were drawn, giving the house an uninhabited, almost ghostly appearance. He parked the car a little further down the street, as Daniel had instructed, so as not to draw attention. "We're here, Edgar," he whispered, more to himself than to the raven. Edgar cawed softly in response, a sound that to Arthur seemed like encouragement. Arthur got out of the car, feeling the cold, damp morning air on his face. He walked quickly to the front door, his heart pounding. He barely had time to knock before the door opened, revealing Elias. His father was thinner than Arthur remembered, his shoulders stooped, his face pale and marked by deep, dark circles. His eyes, however, gleamed with an intensity Arthur hadn't seen in a long time, a mix of fear, hope, and overwhelming gratitude. "Father!" Arthur exclaimed, enveloping Elias in a tight embrace. He felt the fragility of his father's bones, the way he clung to him like a castaway. Guilt hit him with full force. "I'm sorry, Father. I'm sorry it took me so long." Elias sobbed, tears streaming down his aged face. "I knew you would come, my son. I knew. There's no time for explanations now." "Father," Arthur said, stepping back slightly to look into Elias's eyes, "a friend of mine is waiting to take you to a safe place. You don't need to worry about anything else." As he spoke, a discreet car, a dark grey sedan, pulled up a few meters away. A burly man, serious-looking and with an attentive gaze, exited the vehicle. He wore a dark suit and seemed to emanate an aura of silent competence. It was Daniel's associate, the former police officer. "Mr. Arthur," the man asked, his voice low and professional. "I'm Marcos. Daniel sent me." "Yes, Marcos. This is my father, Elias," Arthur replied, gesturing to Elias. "He's ready." Marcos nodded, his eyes assessing Elias with a mix of concern and determination. "Mr. Elias, please come with me. You'll be safe. No one will find you there." Elias looked at Arthur, a last pang of apprehension in his eyes, but the trust on his son's face reassured him. "Go, Father. I love you. We'll be together again soon, and Eva won't be able to hurt you anymore." With a final nod, Elias followed Marcos to the car. Arthur watched as his father, with slow steps, got into the back seat. The car departed silently, disappearing into the fog as quickly as it had arrived. Arthur remained there for a moment, the silence of the street seeming to echo the void Eva had created in his father's life. An immense weight had been lifted from his shoulders, but another, that of the impending charade, was already beginning to settle in. He knew the hardest part was yet to come, returning home, to Eva, and pretending that nothing had happened. Edgar, who had flown to Arthur's shoulder, cawed again, as if reminding him of the task ahead. Arthur stroked the raven's feathers. "You're right, my friend. The battle has only just begun." He returned to his car, starting the engine. The fog still enveloped everything, but now Arthur felt that the darkness was no longer so oppressive. There was a light at the end of the tunnel, and he was determined to reach it, no matter the cost. Eva's comeuppance would be bitter, but the freedom and justice for his father would be worth every second of the torment he would have to endure. He drove back to the mansion, to the serpent's nest, ready to play his part in the final act. Upon reaching the property entrance, Arthur stopped the car for a moment, taking a deep breath. He looked at Edgar, who was perched on the passenger seat, his dark eyes reflecting the faint morning light. "It's now, my friend," he whispered, and the raven cawed softly in response, as if a sign of understanding. He parked in the garage, turned off the engine, and the silence that followed was deafening. The house felt like a stage, and he, the lead actor in a high-stakes play. Arthur entered, trying to erase any trace of haste or worry from his face. He walked to the kitchen, where Ava's coffee cup was still in the sink, a reminder of her recent departure. He made coffee for himself, his hands steady, but his heart pounding erratically. While waiting for the coffee maker to finish, Arthur picked up his phone and sent a quick message to Daniel. "Father safe, Marco sufficient. Next phase underway." The reply came almost immediately. "Great, stay calm. I'll handle the rest." Calm. That was the key word. Arthur knew Eva was cunning, observant. Any slip, any hesitation in his behavior could be fatal. He drank his coffee, trying to focus on routine, on normalcy. About an hour later, the familiar sound of Eva's car approaching the garage broke the silence. Arthur felt a chill run down his spine. He rose from the sofa, where he was reading a newspaper, and headed to the kitchen door, forcing a smile onto his face. Eva entered, radiant as ever, her yoga bag slung over her shoulder and a smile on her lips. "Darling, I'm home earlier than I thought. The class was great and the girls cancelled lunch." She kissed his cheek, a light, distracted kiss. "Are you all right? You look a little pale." Arthur felt a shiver. She had noticed. "Oh, I'm perfectly fine, love. Just a bit tired. Didn't sleep very well. I think the fog gave me a headache." He tried to sound convincing, running a hand over his forehead. Eva frowned slightly, but her smile soon returned. "Poor darling, perhaps some chamomile tea would help. I was thinking of making that mushroom risotto you love for dinner. What do you think?" "Sounds wonderful, Eva," Arthur replied, relief flooding him. She had swallowed the excuse, for now. "I'm going upstairs to take a shower and try to relax a bit." He went upstairs, feeling Eva's gaze on his back. In the bedroom, Edgar was perched on the window, observing the garden. Arthur closed the door and leaned against it, letting out a sigh he didn't realize he'd been holding. She almost noticed Edgar. He whispered to the raven. Edgar tilted his head, his eyes fixed on him, but she didn't, not yet. Arthur went to the bathroom, turned on the shower, and let the hot water run over his body, trying to wash away the tension and fear. He knew that every moment from now on would be an act, a dangerous dance with the woman he had once loved blindly. The image of Elias, fragile and relieved, gave him the necessary strength. Upon leaving the shower, Arthur dressed in casual clothes and went downstairs. Eva was in the kitchen, humming as she prepared lunch. The aroma of spices filled the air. He sat at the table watching her. She was so beautiful, so seemingly innocent. It was difficult to reconcile this image with the cruelty she had demonstrated. "What are you doing this afternoon, darling?" Eva asked without turning around. "I think I'll try to organize some documents in the office. Old stuff, you know." "Nothing important," Arthur replied, the lie coming out with frightening ease. He needed to maintain the facade, even if it meant going through the papers he had thrown into the forest, the very ones Edgar had retrieved. It was the perfect excuse to be busy, and at the same time keep his mind focused on what was to come. Eva nodded. "All right. I'll check on my plants in the garden after lunch. They need attention." Arthur smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. The trap was set. The next phase of Daniel's plan would involve the public revelation, and Arthur needed to be ready for Eva's shock, for her fury. But for the first time in a long time, he was no longer alone. He had his father safe, Daniel as an ally, and of course Edgar, the raven who had uncovered the truth. The final battle was about to begin. Arthur went up to the office, his steps echoing in the mansion's silence. Edgar flew ahead of him, landing on the large mahogany desk where the original documents the raven had retrieved from the forest were carefully stored. Arthur closed the door, feeling a momentary relief at being away from Eva's eyes. The room, usually a refuge for work and thoughts, now felt like a war headquarters. He sat down, his hands trembling slightly as he picked up the forged eviction notice and the fake will. The faint morning light filtered through the windows, illuminating the falsified signatures, the altered dates. Every word, every line was a stab in Arthur's heart. He reread the letter, imagining his father's terror upon receiving it, the feeling of being torn from his home by a cruel lie. The will, which transferred all of Elias's assets to Eva, was the final proof of her boundless ambition. "She's a monster, Edgar," Arthur whispered, his voice choked. The raven cawed softly, as if in agreement, his dark eyes fixed on the papers. How could I have been so blind? He spent the afternoon immersed in the documents, not only those Edgar had found, but also other old family records, searching for any detail, any loophole that could strengthen his case. Daniel had instructed that the revelation needed to be impeccable, irrefutable. Arthur felt the need to understand every facet of Eva's betrayal, to arm himself with every piece of truth. Meanwhile, downstairs, Arthur could hear the muffled sounds of Eva in the garden, the faint rustle of leaves as she tended to her plants. Her image, so serene and dedicated in her gardening, contrasted brutally with the villain he now knew her to be. It was a duality that haunted him, the outer beauty hiding such a profound darkness. Towards late afternoon, Arthur put the documents in a secure folder, locking it in the desk drawer. He stood up, stretching his tense muscles, and looked at Edgar. "It's almost time," he said, more to himself. The aroma of mushroom risotto began to spread through the house, calling him to the kitchen. It was time to resume the act. Arthur descended the stairs, adjusting his expression to that of a tired but loving husband. Eva was in the kitchen, stirring the pot, her hair in a relaxed bun, a floral apron over her clothes. She turned and smiled at him. "Darling, dinner's almost ready. How was organizing your old documents?" There was a playful tone in her voice, but Arthur detected a hint of curiosity, a subtle test. "Exhausting, to be honest," Arthur replied, forcing a yawn. "So much useless paperwork accumulated over the years. But I managed to put some things in order. It's good to have a bit of clarity." Eva nodded, seeming satisfied with the answer. "I'm glad. You look a bit better now. The chamomile tea must have helped." During dinner, the conversation flowed about pleasantries, about Eva's day, about future plans that to Arthur sounded like empty echoes. He listened to her, nodded, asked the right questions. But his mind was elsewhere, going over the details of Daniel's plan. The public revelation would be soon, at a social event Eva loved to organize, a charity gala that would take place at the mansion itself in a few days. It would be the perfect stage for her downfall. Arthur watched Eva laughing, gesticulating, and felt a wave of revulsion mixed with a strange sadness. He had loved this woman. He had trusted her blindly. And now he would be the instrument of her ruin. The irony was cruel. After dinner, Eva suggested they watch a movie. Arthur agreed, sitting beside her on the sofa, maintaining a subtle distance. He felt the weight of his charade, the tension in every muscle, but the image of his father, safe and free, was his shield. When they finally went up to the bedroom, Arthur felt immense relief. Eva fell asleep quickly, exhausted from her day. Arthur, however, remained awake, staring at the dark ceiling. Edgar was perched on the headboard of the bed, a dark silhouette against the window. "Tomorrow," Arthur whispered to the raven, "the countdown begins." He closed his eyes, but sleep didn't come. The anticipation of the battle, the pain of betrayal, and the hope for justice mingled in a whirlwind of emotions. He was ready, or at least he had to be. The next morning dawned cold and grey, a reflection of Arthur's state of mind. He woke before Eva, the weight of a sleepless night still on his shoulders. Edgar was on his usual perch, observing him with his penetrating eyes. "Today's the day, my friend," Arthur whispered, his voice hoarse. The raven cawed, as if confirming the gravity of the situation. Arthur went down to the kitchen, preparing coffee in silence. Eva soon appeared, radiant as ever, oblivious to the approaching storm. "Good morning, darling. Excited for tonight's party? The final preparations are perfect." She kissed him, and Arthur felt a shiver. It was the last time he would see her like this, so carefree, so blind. "Of course, love. I'm sure it will be a success," he replied, forcing a smile. Eva's annual charity gala was the stage chosen by Daniel for the revelation. A gathering of high society with press and influential figures, the perfect place for the truth to explode. While Eva got ready for the beauty salon, Arthur sent a message to Daniel, "All set here, confirm time." And the reply came in seconds. 8 p.m, don't hesitate, justice is on its way. The afternoon passed in a blur of tension. Arthur pretended to help with the final decorating touches, moving chairs, adjusting flower arrangements, while his mind went over each step of the plan. He felt an overwhelming mix of nervousness and a strange calm, the calm of someone about to fulfill an inevitable destiny. Edgar, somewhere in the mansion, seemed to share his apprehension, his occasional caws sounding deeper than usual. Around 7 p.m, the first guests began to arrive. The mansion was stunning, illuminated by crystal chandeliers and candles, the air perfumed with jasmine and the promise of an elegant evening. Eva, in a blue silk dress that enhanced her beauty, greeted everyone with her charming smile. The personification of the perfect hostess, Arthur stood by her side, a fixed smile on his face, shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries while his heart beat like a war drum. Daniel arrived punctually at 7:45 p.m., accompanied by a man in an impeccable suit whom Arthur recognized as a renowned lawyer. They greeted each other discreetly, an almost imperceptible nod. Daniel cast a significant glance at Arthur, who understood. The countdown was over. At 8 p.m, Eva ascended the small stage set up in the main hall to deliver her welcome speech. The crowd fell silent, their gazes fixed on her. "Good evening, everyone. It's an honor to have you all here." It was then that Daniel, with an unnerving calm, approached the stage. The lawyer accompanying him carried a leather briefcase. Daniel waited for Eva to finish her introduction, and when she paused for a sip of water, he took the microphone from her hand. "Excuse me, Eva," Daniel said, his voice resonating through the hall. Eva looked at him, surprised, but with a forced smile. "Daniel, what a surprise. Would you like to say a few words about the cause?" "Actually, Eva, I'd like to present something of extreme importance to everyone here, and especially to Arthur," Daniel replied, his gaze fixed on her. A murmur began to spread through the crowd. Arthur felt the air thin. The lawyer opened the briefcase and handed Daniel the documents. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel continued, his voice firm and clear, "tonight, The truth about Arthur's family and the inheritance of Elias, his father, will be revealed. He held up the forged eviction notice and the fake will. These documents, forged by Mrs. Eva Montero, aimed to dispossess Mr. Elias Montero of his home and assets, keeping him under blackmail and isolation. The hall plunged into a stunned silence. Eva's eyes widened, her smile dissolving into horrified shock. She tried to grab the papers, but Daniel stepped back. "This is absurd, a slander!" Eva shrieked, her voice sharp and desperate. "Arthur, tell them, this is a lie!" Arthur, who had been motionless until then, took a step forward, his voice choked with pain and contained rage. "No, Eva, it's not a lie." He took the documents from Daniel's hands, showing them to the crowd. "I was blinded by passion, but the truth, as always, finds its way." He looked at Eva, his eyes filled with profound sadness. "My father is safe now, and you will pay for every act of cruelty." Eva's face turned pale, then red with fury. "You traitor! How could you?" She tried to lunge at Arthur, but some guests restrained her. The murmur turned into a clamor of indignation. Camera flashes began to fire. Suddenly, a loud caw echoed through the hall. Edgar, the raven, had flown from the window and landed on Arthur's shoulder, his dark eyes fixed on Eva like a silent judge. The image of the raven, the messenger of truth, sealed Eva's fate in everyone's minds. Eva collapsed, her legs giving way. The mask of virtue she had worn for so long finally shattered into 1,000 pieces, revealing the darkness behind it. The party, which was meant to be her triumph, became her stage of humiliation and ruin. Arthur felt an emptiness, a searing pain, but also a liberation. Justice, though bitter, had been served. He looked at Edgar, who rubbed his head against his neck. The final battle was over, and for the first time in a long time, Arthur felt he could finally breathe.